The entire story of Four Knights the Apocalypse has just been flipped on its head with the recent developments in Chapter 216 of the Four Knights manga, so if you're not caught up, please skip this video, or don't. I would appreciate you watching regardless, but either way, if you're not caught up, you don't want spoilers, watch something else. Maybe a review of 216 of Four Knights the Apocalypse. But anyway, the most recent chapter of Four Knights the Apocalypse revealed to us that not only is Merlin, alive, but she is in some other dimension or area of the world, and with her is a malnourished, aged up Arthur Pendragon. And this leaves us with a massive cliffhanger, as for 200 chapters or so, we have been wanting a couple of answers to how the events of Four Knights the Apocalypse even kicked off. Why is Arthur evil now? Why is Camelot in another dimension? Why is Arthur unhinged and not caring much about human life despite him claiming to, want to be part of human life? Why has he barely aged? There is a lot of stuff we can consider when it comes to Arthur, as many of us essentially assume that the power of chaos and his own fresh mental state potentially corrupted him and altered him in some way, shape, or form. But in Chapter 216, not only was it revealed that literally 18 years ago, literally right around the time the Four Knights of the Apocalypse were essentially born, and right sometime after Grudge of Edinburgh, Arthur began to change. His personality changed, and it was Kay, his brother, that noticed it. And so Merlin looked into it, and after leaving Gawain with Kay, decided to leave this realm as she had to hide something. And it was revealed to be Arthur. Now this gives us the question of, who is the Arthur we have been facing thus far? Why has Merlin brought Arthur to a separate dimension? Why is he older? Why is he malnourished? And why in the most recent chapter, he has lost apparently some of his power. We'll get into that right now, but before we jump into this video, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps show you guys enjoy what I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Sorry for that long ass intro, but stuff happens. But if you want to see more of me outside of this channel and these reviews, not only check out my other stuff on the channel for Fairy Tail and Dead Rock, but don't forget to check out my weekly manga podcast, Shonen Pulse, on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, where me and my co-hosts, Yatogami, Nox, and Papa Trophy talk about 9 manga on a weekly basis from 3 different magazines. It's a lot of fun. We dive deep into every single chapter, and we talk about a wide variety of different series that either you probably heard of, or you might want to get into. Join discussions, link to the podcast will be in the description down below. And also, I have a second channel for myself called GW Comics, where I talk about American comic books. I'm very DC focused right now, and I'm planning to do some Batman stuff, but I got other stuff planned in the wings as well for that channel as well. It's a passion project of mine, and I would really appreciate if you guys go and check that out. Link to that will also be in the description down below. Now then, back to the video. So, with the reveal of Arthur being in another realm with Merlin, we need to think what exactly happened. So, a couple weeks ago, I made a video on how Kath has been secretly manipulating Arthur, or has subconsciously been influencing him through all the, traumatic shit he has experienced over the course of his life, and with him now gaining this immense power essentially over creation, like overnight, has kind of altered Arthur over the years to being the blatant psychopath and ruler that he is right now. But that doesn't seem to be what has occurred. What I think happened is after Kay noticed the differences in Arthur and Merlin investigated, she did something to potentially separate Arthur from chaos in a way. Now what that means, I actually think that what we're seeing at the end of chapter 216, the Arthur with Merlin, is the human side of Arthur. And what we're seeing with, who's ruling Camelot, the younger Arthur, is in fact the embodiment of the power of chaos. And this could still lead into my idea of Arthur's trauma and Kath's subconscious manipulation affecting things. Because, like I mentioned in the last chapter, there's been way too much Kath, illusion and stuff like that that is blatantly obvious, if we really think about it, throughout the entirety of Arthur's appearances, whether it be on the hilt of his sword, the crest on his prosthetic right arm, or literally the moment where his clone swirled away and half of the swirl was Kath's face. There is a lot to really think about for Kath to be, around in the subconscious of Arthur, changing him slowly over the years. But now that Arthur is split into 2 people, like I mentioned in the review, it might be the similar aspect of how when Meliodas gave in to his dark emotions, or essentially gave up his emotions with the curse that the Supreme Deity gave to him about his eternal life and losing emotions every time he dies and revives, with Meliodas having his emotions sent to Purgatory as a separate entity, leaving his main body with all his memories and stuff like that, but without his human emotion, we could be seeing a parallel of that with Arthur right now. And this could be really interesting, because we could dive into not only what changed Arthur over the years, but perhaps despite Arthur being the King of Chaos, the power of Chaos wasn't ready for... Arthur wasn't ready for the power of Chaos just yet, and he gained that power way too early. Because remember, Arthur died when he fought Zeldris and Estarossa, thanks to Cusack brainwashing him to essentially, kill himself. And Arthur got the power of Chaos to revive him after having it unlocked from within him, thanks to the Lady of the Lake and Merlin teaming up over their centuries of planning. And due to everything that Arthur has experienced, the power of Chaos was definitely slowly changing his personality and corrupting him. So it's very likely that Merlin did some sort of forbidden spell to split up Arthur's humanity into a separate entity. He most likely still has the power of Chaos, because remember, Merlin said Arthur lost some of his power, and Merlin in chapter 216 said that what she has been hiding, which is Arthur, that's revealed to us, is the key to stopping Chaos. So, for what we can tell, the human side of Arthur, while he's losing power, will need the strength of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse to mount a counterattack on the Chaos personification of him in order to regain his powers and basically set everything right. But it still doesn't explain what the Chaos Arthur is and what he wants. Well, this is still going to be a psychological aspect of Arthur, because the humanity of Arthur is a separate entity, but what remains is Arthur's ambitions twisted by Chaos. Just the unbridled power, essentially a separate personality. And we could keep Kath in there as a separate essence that has kind of been, well, now that he's a part of Chaos again, kind of festering into this other segment of Arthur that is pushing him towards the more dark and twisted, the more chaotic ruler that he is. While he made a place where humans can basically live long lives and see their loved ones again, it's also basically a flip. It is not real. The world is stealing stuff from Britannia, taking the lives of others, and not only that, but also basically dismissing anyone that isn't human. Since the power of Chaos, or the Lord of Chaos, Chaos itself, created humanity as a nice balance of good and evil, essentially, of darkness and light, as the embodiments, and humans can go either way. And since it seemed Chaos favored humans, since it was probably its favorite creation, the Supreme Deity and the Demon King sealed him away. The very tree, the Great Fairy Tree, was kind of off onto its own devices. And it's probably the best deity in this entire goddamn pantheon in Four Knights of the Apocalypse and Seven Deadly Sins. That's besides the point. I'm literally trailing off again. But this version of Arthur favoring humanity could just be Arthur's own insecurities and darker emotions taking shape in a separate form, taking that aspect of Chaos that created humanity and favored humanity, and really nailing that to its extreme. Without Arthur's humanity hampering it down, giving it a sense of real morality and sense of right and wrong, this side of Arthur that's been created and manifested, that still looks like a version of Arthur from his late teens and early 20s, is growing stronger and stronger every day, taking portions of Britannia into its own home reality, even to the point where it's not viewing his own knights and subordinates as people. We've questioned why Arthur went off the deep end to the point of not only seeing his knights as disposable pawns, but also literally making the Four Perils stronger by giving up their humanity and making it so they can't remember their humanity in a twisted sense of power through loyalty and giving up what's important to them to essentially, in a way, protect what's important to them. But they can't do that if they don't remember what's important to them. It's chaotic. It makes sense for the aspect of, what this is. And so without Arthur's humanity, it is unfiltered and limitless. It has no bounds. It will keep growing, taking from Britannia to grow its own spaces further and further along to create the everlasting kingdom that Arthur originally envisioned, but much more twisted and a lot more fake. without this sense of morality and light and hope that Arthur set out to have within his home kingdom. And so, that's why we have two Arthurs. One is the humanity, but the other is his dreams and ambitions, twisted by the power of chaos, uninhibited by that humanity. And since Arthur lost a good bit of his power over 2 years, it's very likely that by separating his humanity, Arthur also lost a good bit of the power of chaos. And so by being separated, he isn't as strong as he used to be, which could lead into why the prophecy of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse is so important, because in 216, Merlin described Gawain as one of the Knights of Prophecy that would rescue Arthur. Not destroy, like Camelot's prophecy, or save Britannia, essentially, like how Leonis's, Bartra's prophecy is, but Merlin says to rescue Arthur. And this could lead into the creation of the Knights of the Round Table in this universe. And basically, we might end up having a more of a protagonist shift, perhaps towards the end of the series, having Arthur be the main character, because we all know that Nakaba, over the years, ever since Arthur's introduction, has said he's always wanted a series focused on Arthur, or a series where Arthur was the protagonist, the lead. Obviously taking more of a direct role of Arthurian legend being adapted into a series, with Arthur being the main character. But that will either be towards the end of the manga, where we get more of a focus on Arthur and his character leading up to the inevitable finale, or this could be set up, like literally a far ahead setup for a potential other sequel or spin-off that follows Arthur's protagonist with his Knights of the Round Table. I mean, in Four Knights of the Apocalypse, we've got a good number of characters that would be part of the members of the Round Table, primarily with the Four Knights. We have Gareth, we have Balin, we have Galahad. There is characters in this series that do represent characters from Arthurian legend, from the Knights of the Round Table, and we'll possibly get more, because we're also supposed to have that prophecy that Bartra talked about in chapter 207 about going to another realm, another world, another kingdom, and meeting other adversaries, 4 adversaries. And I've stated, and many others have thought, this would be Avalon with 4 powerful knights, and we might get to see Morgan Le Fay, a prominent figure in Arthurian legend that hasn't made their appearance yet in the series. But it's very clear that Gawain is the key to finding Merlin, thus the key to finding Arthur. So we could end up having the Four Knights' next arc being them traversing to another realm to find Merlin and Arthur, and having more of the story explained. Having the real origins of what happened to Arthur completely explained from Arthur's point of view, to the knowledge that people that were there. And if this other realm that Merlin is in fact Avalon, perhaps she also has powerful knights there that could aid in the Four Knights of the Apocalypse in their future quests. And as we gather up the members of the Round Table, plus the Four Knights that are the members that are prophesized to save the world and rescue Arthur, this could also be a way to reintroduce Excalibur. Remember Excalibur? The sword that Arthur pulled wasn't able to really utilize its power until he awakened to chaos after literally dying. The sword that represents a demon and a goddess and an angel with its hilt, looking as a cross of darkness and light. The sword that Arthur, or Chaos Arthur, has not used at all in the sequel. This might be where that sword is. The human Arthur might actually be the one still in possession of Excalibur, and utilizing the powers of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse and potentially the other members of the Knights of the Round Table that will essentially collect throughout the rest of this manga, because I don't even think we're halfway done with this series yet. That could be what helps reinvigorate Arthur, so that he essentially is one of the characters, if not the character, that fights his Chaos Self, reuniting his Chaos Self and humanity and human side, now that his humanity is potentially stronger with the aid of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse and the rest of the Knights of the Round Table, to kind of give himself a sense of balance and being the real Arthur Pendragon that he is supposed to be, and the real true King of Chaos. This could be where the story is leading now, with Arthur's humanity, or at least his human side that I believe, being with Merlin malnourished and needing to regain his strength. It could also be why the Four Knights of the Apocalypse are so important, especially from when they were born, which is also the same time that Arthur's personality started to change. So there is a lot to really dive into and think about when it comes to the rest of the story. we're definitely going to get more characters. We're definitely going to go to Avalon most likely based off of the other realm and more knights. But we'll also get to see what's going on with Arthur and Merlin and what happened to him to separate what seems to be the power of chaos personified, that is a twisted version of himself and his desires, and his humanity, which is growing weaker each day. And the fact that the Four Knights could also be tied to Arthur's power might actually not be further from the truth, because Arthur started losing some of his power 2 years prior to the current chapter, which was also when Percival died and left the realm of the living to go back to the spirit realm with his other life spirit brethren. So that also makes sense and adds credence to the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, at minimum being a good source of helping Arthur regain his strength for the inevitable final clash against Chaos. But that's just my theory. That's my whole theory of what's going to happen with Arthur, what happened with him, why he's like this, and how the next arc could lead into him and the repower up of himself with the Sword of Excalibur, the holy blade that he has had for a long time and he was destined to have, that even Merlin sought out so that he could pull from. But you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about the reveal about Arthur? How do you think this is going to lead into the future of the series? Do you agree with my theories and thoughts on how this could lead to the next arc and how this could lead to Arthur growing stronger and the Four Knights being tied to helping him regain his strength? Let me know your thoughts, opinions, and your own theories in the comment section down below. And what's more, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for our updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.